I went to this really large mall with my friend Macy one time. We were shopping together. Like, we have Tinda, this mall is one of my favorites of all time and was very crowded with lots of other people on the day that we went to. I'm not sure how many stores are in this mall, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was like 500 as Macy. And I shopped around, we noticed seeing a few of the same people multiple times. You know how it is when you're shopping and you might see a guy walking near you, and then you cross paths a while later. Nobody really stood out for one reason or anything. Though I mentioned this toy, you now for context for the rest of the story. So we shopped for several hours, maybe 3 or 4. It was a good solid day of shopping. After that we left and hung out some more at my place. Macy eventually left and went back to her apartment. He was alone in my place late that night when I went on Snapchat. This random woman had added Mether. I'm used to being added by random people. It doesn't happen that much anymore, but still here. And there it's usually guys who add Metho and not women. He was curious who she was. So I added her back. When I did, I saw that she had posted a story and I watched it. There was not just one Snapchat story that she posted. Thought there was like 10 or 15. I realized that she had been at the mall earlier. In the first picture she was taking a selfie in front of the large open area in the mall. Upon seeing her, I realized that I remembered noticing her in the mall. I had seen her about maybe twice, but thought nothing of it. Hadn't seemed to be doing anything weird when I was aware in the mall, and was just one of the people that I had seen passing by, but I didn't know where or recognized her. Other than that, at all, the woman had dark hair that was slicked back. She was also wearing dark sunglasses and a tracksuits. He looked almost mysterious in the selfie that she took. I noticed that Macy and I were in the background. I had no idea that the picture had even been taken. We were not looking at it or anything. I moved on to her next story. It was a picture of a fountain at the mall with the location filter showing the mall she was at. It was not a selfie, but a photo that she took in the picture among the people walking by the fountain. In August, me and Macy again. Now this was really weird. I looked at the next story this time. The woman was posing for a photo, meaning someone else took it for her. It was in the food court, and in the background was me and Macy again, except you could only see our backs because we were facing away, and I had no clue that the picture had ever been taken. And moved on to the next picture, which was in a random hallway in the mall. The woman was walking directly behind Macy, and I moved on again to another selfie with you in the background. The more I saw, the more my jaw dropped. Was getting really creeped out. There were a few photos that I did not see us in, but we were in like 10 of them. Man, I had no clue that any of them had been taken at all. Then I got a Snapchat from Macy. I opened it, and she told me that some lady added her on Snapchat and had posted a bunch of pictures of us. She had added Makey as well. I told her that she added me too, and I had also seen the pictures. We then FaceTime and talked about how crazy it was for like an hour. It made me feel better to know that I wasn't alone in this strange situations. So after talking, we decided to ask the lady what the deal was. And the chat saying that I noticed me and my friend were in the background of a lot of her pictures. He asked her why she did that and why she had added Yusa. Got no response, but was immediately blocked. She blocked Macy Tooth. This was so confusing. We never heard from her again. I'm still left with many questions. Who was this woman? Why did she do that? And how did she know who we were? I mean, how did she find Macy in my Snapchat account? Would she even know our names? It was really strange experience. I worked at a mall as a custodian years ago. Would describe it as a pretty average mall, but it was kind of small as well. Most of the time I would work there after the mall closed, doing various tasks, mostly eating and maintenance type of stuff. He would work really late at night and would get off at around midnight, or so usually because the mall was kind of small. I was typically the only one working after close. The mall closed at 8 p.m. Mando night. After that, I was working like normal. Sometimes it would feel a little spooky when it got really late at night. Being by myself in an entire mall was weird because it would get really quiet so few hours after close at maybe 10 p.m. I remember that I heard what sounded like footsteps. They were not within my sight, and I could not confirm exactly what the sound was. However, nobody was supposed to be in the mall anymore at all, so therefore I should not be hearing anything. It made me wonder if somebody else was in the It continued listening and heard the sound again a short time later. It definitely sounded like somebody was walking in a nearby hallway. I thought that maybe an employee who worked in one of the stores was just leaving. Occasionally, employees in stores would stay late. Never had I noticed anybody staying 2 hours late though, so I just stayed where I was and continued working, assuming that if that was the case, they would just leave like 5 minutes later. I heard another sound. This was not somebody walking though. I heard someone calling out saying, "Hey!" It sounded like a man. I yelled, asking who was there. He told me to come here. I started walking over to where the sound was coming from. I went to the end of the hallway that I was in and turned and went into another one. When I made it into that hallway, I did not see anybody there. I called out asking where they were, but nobody answered. Then I just walked around trying to figure out where this guy was. I heard him yell again for me to get there now. But I realized then that he had moved. His voice was definitely not coming from where it had been before. I didn't know what was going on or who he even was, but I kept going to try to find him. The way he was yelling made it seem like he might need help, but now he was seemingly running away from. Meshi was yelling, and this seemed suspicious. He called out again, now even farther away. I yelled, asking what was going on. By now, I was frustrated and also creeped out. I walked around and the voices stopped altogether. Like I said, the mall was not that large. There's still a decent amount of hallways and places to go, but eventually looked in all of them. The stores were all closed by now. Obviously, there was limited places for this guy to go. After searching pretty much the entire mall without finding the guy, I went back to work. I figured that he left, and maybe he was just some guy pulling a prank. He went around and made sure that all the doors were locked, which they were. Then I finished my work for the night. In the rest of the time that I was working, I was nervous and always looking over my shoulder, but I also didn't hear anything more and I didn't see anything suspicious. Either really late that night, I left and went home the next morning. I got a call from my boss. He told me that one of the doors to the mall had been propped open when he got there in the morning. Apparently there was a rock propping open one of the doors. Thankfully, nobody was in the mall. When he got there, it told him what happened with the noises I heard and stuff. Apparently the guy must have never left Ollie. Don't know where he had been hiding. When my boss heard this, he contacted the police and reported it. The mall got searched again, but nobody was found. I'm guessing that some guy hid in the mall after close, and then for some reason decided to yell at me. I still don't know what to make of it. They must have still be in there the rest of the time that I worked, and then after I left to go home, he must have snuck out and left. Why he left the rock propping the door open, I'm not sure. Maybe he planned to come back. I still don't really know what to make of it, but being in that situation was one of the scariest moments of my life. I worked at a store in a mall for about a year. This was a long time ago now, but I will never forget the crazy incident that happened. So I was working by myself to close one night. Usually there would be at least two of us working at Hunt's. It was a clothing store that sold some accessories and things like this. Well, my coworker had recently quit, though leaving me alone to close and managed pretty well. Was experienced there by then and knew what to do. There were a couple of times that day when things got busy and the lines were a little bit long, but all I did well. Soon it became really quiet as we approached the closing time of 7 p.m. in the 6 hour. Not nearly as many people stopped in. By 6:30, it was dead and nobody else was there. So I was at the counter, which was kind of in the exact center of the store. There were clothing racks all around, but then behind me was a wall, and behind that wall was another area where people could shop. My plan was to stay at the counter until close, then lock up Domi finishing tasks, and then clock out and be on my way. However, not long after 6:30, this man entered the store. He had really short hair that was kind of blondish. The man looked fairly young and was wearing sweat pants and a shirt. He walked inside the store and looked around, including at me. I was far enough away, though, where it wasn't a normal thing to greet the customers, so I just stood behind the counters, smiling politely. Then the man paced around in the front area of the store for a while, and then sat down. There was a little bench chair next to the doors. Just inside, he sat there facing me, just kind of looking in my direction. For the next 20 minutes, the man just sat there. I was confused as to what he was doing. Was he waiting for someone? There was nobody else in the store at all other than him and Metho, and also nobody else. He entered the store in the time that he was there. It was getting more and more awkward. Finally, at 6:55, he was still there. It didn't look like he was going to shops. So I decided to walk over to him and let them know that we were closing in 5 minutes. So I left the counter and started to approach the man. When I did, he instantly got up. At first, he started walking towards me, told him that we were closing in 5 minutes and he would have to be done shopping by then. But the man just zipped right past me, going farther into the store. He didn't even acknowledge anything that I said. He went around to the back part of the store behind the counter. He wanted to make sure that he knew we were closing, so I started to walk over there. When I got to the back, though, I witnessed the man push over a full rack of cloths, then hurried over and pushed over a mannequin, knocking it to the ground. He seemed to be getting violent, and he told him that they needed to leave. Of course, he ignored Metho and moved back over to the counter to call security. I heard things being pushed over and messed up behind me. As I called, the man continued. As I made the call, he eventually ran back to the front of the store. Then he took a bunch of clothes and tossed them up into the air. After that, he ran out of the store and left. It quickly locked up. At that point, security got there every short time later, and I explained what happened. Then I had to stay a whole 45 minutes late, picking up the mess and organizing from what the man Did when I finally left, just about everybody in the mall was gone. I didn't even get word if they caught the guy, I'm guessing not, but I really hope they did nevertheless. I never saw him again, and nothing like that happened again either last year. I went shopping at a fairly large mall. It was a weekend, so it was very crowded, and tons of other people were there. In some areas it was hard to even walk through the walkways because it was so crowded. It was there for a few hours and did a decent amount of shopping. However, in the time that I was there, I was pickpocketed. At least I'm like 90% sure that he would always keep my wallet just inside of my back pocket, which was a terrible habit. Habits are hard to break though, but I obviously don't do that anymore. So anyways, I just know that when I left the mall, I realized that I did not have my wallet anymore. And despite me keeping it in a bad spot, it had never fallen out before when or anything. After realizing that I didn't have it, I quickly canceled my credit cards. Then I looked everywhere that I could think to look. There was really nouse, though surely somebody would have picked it up, and even if nobody did it, would be like finding a need. Lena Haystack was disappointed, but luckily I didn't have much cash in the wallet, and nobody had used my cards. Yet, I thought that I would never get it back. And so when I was home, I started ordering new credit cards. I also looked into getting a new driver's license. I was pretty disappointed, but what could I do about it now? However, late that night, I owed a text from a random number. I did not recognize the text. Said, "Meet me tomorrow night at 11 p. Man, bring $100 cash to get wallet." It also had an address which turned out to be a park near the city. A ways away, I texted back asking who this was and where they had got my wallet. They didn't respond, though I wasn't sure what I should do. Had they stolen my wallet or found it? I was pretty sure that they had stolen it. I considered getting the police involved, but I figured that I couldn't prove that this person stole it and not just found it. The fact that they wanted Met to bring $100 really made me mad, though. After thinking about it, I decided that I would go and meet with them at the park, but I told my friend Marty about it, and he agreed to go with me to get my wallet at the park. I didn't know what to expect, but being asked to meet at 11 night in a park sure seemed sketchy. I really wanted to get my wallet back, though, so the next night we drove to the park. At around 11, I had never been to that park before. It was a parking lot off a quiet road surrounded by woods. Then there were a few trails, but it was super dark. Now when I arrived, nobody else was in the parking lot. Marty and I sat in the car waiting at 11 p.m. sharp. I got a knot. Her text from the number, it said, "Exit your vehicle and take the left path for a 4-mile." This seemed even more sketchy tone for some reason, though. I got out of the car. Just really wanted my wallet back. He had the $100 cash, and Marty stayed in the cars. So I began walking down the path to the left. It was literally pitch dark, and I could barely see anything. I made it about a 100 red yard down the trail when I felt my phone vibrating. It was not another text from the number, though, but it was a call from Marty. I picked it up. I heard Marty telling me to get back to the car now. Then I heard off in the distance tints of honking coming from a car horneel, so heard a car driving. I turned around and ran back to the parking lot. By the time I got there, I just barely saw an SUV driving off down the quiet road. As all Marty in the car, waving me. We were still parked in the same spot. Too quickly went back inside the car. Marty explained to me what had happened. He said that when I was a ways down the path, this SUV pulled into the parking lot. I saw at least 3 guys in it, and he claimed that he was sure he saw one of them brandishing a gun. They pulled up and parked a few spaces away. Marty figured that I was in trouble to get jumped or maybe worse, so he started honking the car horn like crazy. This actually scared them off. I figured they thought that was mean, seeing how he was still in the car and making a bunch of noise. They wouldn't be able to rob him. If Marty had not been there, these guys would have ambushed me on the dark trail. Now I know a lot of people will say that I'm stupid. Why would anybody meet a random personal one in a park at 11 p.m. on a random trail in the woods? And you're right, it was stupid, and I deserve all the crap that I get for it. But I was much younger, and I've certainly learned from the experience. At least I had the thought to bring a friend, which ended up saving me. Hopefully this can teach anybody listening to always be prepared in any situation. This is something that happened back in the 1990s. When I was in high school, I used to hang out with my friends at our local mall all the time. The mall was very popular back then, none time. I remember that we were going to this one new store that had just opened. It was some kind of clothing store that was having a big grand opening. Was with my friend Shauna at the time, and we were waiting in line to get into the store. The store was already open, but they would only let a certain amount of people in at a time because there were so many people there. So as Wes stood in line for a while, I told Shauna that I was going to get a pretzel and would be right back. She would keep our place in line. And I recall that it seemed like it was going to be at least a 10-minute wait before we got into the store. I could see the pretzel shop just down the ways. So I walked over there and got one. I was gone from Shauna for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I would say then I walked back over to her. When I arrived back, she told me that some guy had been following me. I had no idea, asked her what she was talking about, and she pointed to a guy that was now sitting on a bench not too far away. She said that she saw me gotta get the pretzel and the mango in line behind me, but after I left without ordering, she said that she could see him just staring at me, and then following when I got back in line with Shauna. Though obviously he couldn't, and he went and sat down on the bench, as she was telling Meth this. I saw the man look up at us, and then quickly looked back down away. I didn't know how I could have been so oblivious that I hadn't noticed him. Wes stayed in line and kind of kept an eye on the man as we waited. While shopping, he would walk away, but he didn't. He just kept sitting there, and here and there he would lock eyes with me for a second. The man had sort of stringy hair, like he was long and greasy, but he was also balding a little. He also had a goatee. While we were finally lead into the store, we made our way in and shopped. We were inside for probably like 15 minutes, and I remember that we each got some stuff. As we were inside the store shopping, I forgot all about the man. Eventually we left. When we did, though, I saw the man still sitting there on the bench in the same spot, and I remembered him. And now we started to walk away, and when we started to walk away, I noticed the man jetting up. Shauna and I walked to the right, and we saw that the man was starting to walk after us. This is where our instincts really kicked. Webeth just started running. West sprinted through the mall, with some people probably thinking that we were crazy. But the man did not sprint after Yusa. Think he realized how crazy suspicious that would look. We ran and ran until we got to the exits. Then we left and drove home. We never saw that man again after that. I'm really glad that we didn't, because we hung out at the mall many more times. Maybe the man had seen us before, or maybe that was his only time at that mall. I'm really not sure. But I'm glad that we did not stick around to see what he wanted. Something strange happened. When I went to the mall a couple of weeks ago, I went shopping by myself one weekend. It's a mall nearby where I live, which has quite a few stores. Zinity enjoys shopping at this mall because it's pretty nice. A couple of hours after I got there, I was in one of the stores looking at clothes. As I was in a random, nobody else was around me. I was kind of towards the back of the store. Randomly, I heard a loud noise nearby and looked over to see a display shelf falling over. Didn't see the other side of it. I assumed that somebody had either ran into it or pushed it over. It fell to the ground and into the aisle that I was in, and I looked and didn't see anybody nearby at all. It was confusing. It was like whoever knocked it over had quickly ran away. I walked over and it wasn't a huge mess, so I just picked it back up. Nobody else was over there. He continued on and eventually left that store. When I was in another store, maybe 20 minutes later, another weird thing happened. Once again in Anazla by myself, out of nowhere something came flying over from the next aisle over and nearly hit me. It was a random hat. And I thought that this was really weird. Now that was two strange things to happen in the past half hour. Was somebody messing with me for some reason? He wasn't sure. I walked out of the aisle and around to the next one and looked but didn't see anyone. The other people in the store just appeared to be normal shoppers. There was no way of knowing if it had been them or not. I just continued shopping, hoping that nothing else as strange would happen for the next 30 minutes. Or so. I went to a couple more stores and things were fine. Then I was walking down a hallway in the mall, and randomly I felt something hit the back of my leg. I stopped and looked behind. It was a tennis ball. Somebody must have thrown it at me. Looked around and didn't see who had done it. There weren't a ton of people around there, but there were a few. Some people looked at me picking up the tennis ball, but I still didn't know who had done it. The area that the ball had been thrown from was near an intersection of another hallways. Other person could have easily run away, or they could have ducked into a store or something and just kept walking. And once more hoped that it would stop. For about an hour, nothing happened. I figured that whoever it was had stopped messing with men. Now at one point, I stopped in the food court and was sitting down drinking a coffee. It's a large food court, and it was pretty crowded on this day. Countless people were scattered around. At that point, I went on my phone and I saw that I had a notification on Instagram. I had a follow request on Instagram from someone. I looked at their profile, and it was a guy wearing a blue ski mask. I could not tell who he was. We didn't have any mutual followers. And when I looked at this page, he had two pictures of himself in various places at night. But in both photos, she was wearing the ski mask. For whatever reason, I just felt like maybe him and the strange things happening in the mall were linked. I don't know why, but I just had that thought. Then literally just as I was looking at the page on Instagram, I saw that I got a message request from that same user. I looked at it and he said, "I can see you." This really freaked me out, and I now knew that it had to be the same person. I looked around the food court, thinking maybe I would see somebody with a blue ski mask, and didn't though. Whoever he was, she was hiding in plain sight. And I don't think he was wearing the ski mask. There were so many people, I didn't notice anybody staring at me or anything. So I responded to him asking who he was. Did not respond to me. I was so creeped out that I decided to leave right then and there. I got up and quickly made my way for the nearest exit. I left the mall, went out to my car and drove home. Thankfully, I wasn't followed or anything, also blocked the Instagram account. I'm not sure who that was messing with me. And how did they find my Instagram? I haven't been back to that mall since I went shopping at the mall with my sister a couple of years ago. We did lots of stuff together, and she's just a few years older than I am. We went to this really huge mall that's about 15 minutes from the city we live in. We went inside and shopped for hours. I think we went to like 20 different stores and spent more money than I would like to admit. But when we were finally done, it was a day well spent. When we left the mall, it was probably like 5 or 6 p.m. And things were quieter around there. Now we parked, I think on the second level of the parking garage, or maybe the third, but we were parked next to the wall in the back row after putting our many shopping bags in the car. Both got in the front, my sister was driving, and I was in the front passenger seat. Before leaving, though, my sister got a FaceTime from one of our friends. It was a girl who's good friends with the both of yous, and Wes started talking to her before leaving. During this conversation, maybe 5 minutes into it, we saw somebody walk right up to the front driver's door of the car. Thought that it was whoever had drove the cart that was parked next to us, but it wasn't. It was a man, and he instantly turned and started knocking on my sister's window. My sister quickly ended the phone call and looked up at the man. She rolled down the window just to crack. Was curious to know what the man wanted as well, but also suspicious. Asked for a ride and said that Harley needed to get someplace. Obviously, it would be a bad idea to give a ride to a random stranger, my sister said. Now, I couldn't do it. After saying no, the man instantly walked back, and I thought that was walking away, but I stopped at the rear driver's side door and then tried opening it. The door was locked though, and he couldn't get in. Then the man came back and started banging on my sister's windows. He yelled at him to go away. He did not, just continued to bang on the window, and I was afraid that it might break. So then my sister put the car into reverse and started backing up. She was able to get out of the space and then started to drive away. The man chased after us, though with it being a parking garage, my sister could not go very fast. We had to go back around to where the ramp went down. The man was able to catch up with us pretty easy. Then he ran alongside the Karen, jumped onto the hood of the car, and blocked the windshield. It was one of the craziest things I had ever seen. In this moment, my sister then stopped the cart. The man started yelling and then banging on the windshield. We happened to be passing by one of the walkways that led into the mall. When I looked over, I noticed a man walking on the walkway and starting to enter the parking lot area. This man then started yelling at the guy on the hood of our car. He told him to get down and asked what he was doing. The man got off the hood of my sister's car and then started charging at the other guy. We watched him attempt to attack the guy. However, this man entering the parking lot was a big guy who looked strong, like maybe he was a weightlifter or possibly had been in the military, because when the crazy man approached him, the guy easily took him to the ground. He was yelling at the guy and the other man struggled to attack him. The strong man yelled at us to call 911. Asha had the man in some kind of a wrestling pin or something. We did as she asked and continued to sit there. Within a minute or two, somebody else left the mall to go into the parking lot. They instantly saw what was happening though and turned around and left. The crazy guy was yelling and cursing, and the strong guy was telling him to shut up. My sister and I were not really sure what to do, so we just stayed there in the cart. Thankfully, within about 5 minutes, the cops got there. I think there are some that always patrol around the mall. They were able to detain the crazy guy and talk to all of yous involved. There was also security camera footage in the garage which would verify the whole incident. After talking with officers, we went home. That was my craziest trip to the mall ever. There was an old, nearly abandoned mall not too far from where I lived. This was a few years ago now, and I don't live there anymore, but I had lived in the area for a while at the time and passed by it several times. I didn't know if it was open or not, but night, for whatever reason, I got curious and decided to check it out. I'm not a guy who loves to explore abandoned buildings or anything like that, but I've always found malls interesting, and I've been fascinated with retail businesses and their history and whatnot. Going in tooled and outdated stores and malls always feels kind of interesting, like you're going back in time or something. So I went to this mall and I parked in the nearly empty parking lot. There were just a couple of cars scattered around, maybe 5, I couldn't tell if they were maybe mall employees, customers, or just random cars of people who weren't even on the property. I got out and then walked to the doors from the outside. The mall looked like it hadn't been touched since the late 1990s. I walked up to the doors, half expecting them to be locked. The first door was, but to me surprise, these kind on opened. I looked around and saw that it was mostly dark inside. I started walking down the hallway, and there were open stores. All the spaces for stores were either empty or completely covered up. But that was just one of the hallways, so I kept walking. It got farther, and things had been completely silent. That's when I started hearing noises. At first I heard what sounded like something falling over a ways away ahead of me, and out of my sight. I couldn't tell where exactly it was coming from. If it was inside of a store, or in a hallway, or what. I walked into another hallway with more abandoned stores. It was kind of interesting to see despite the noises, because it looked like it hadn't been touched in many years. There I heard the sound of what sounded like whistling. It was really quiet, and whoever was whistling was not whistling any tune. In particular, I was getting creeped out as I kept walking. I heard another set of footsteps, but far away. It was probably the same person, but I didn't know for sure after being in the mall for maybe 5 minutes and exploring a couple of hallways. I decided that maybe I should leave. This was a little bit too creepy for him. I figured that I was probably not even supposed to be there in the first place. I mean, I hadn't seen an open store at all. I turned around and then heard the footsteps again. Somebody else was definitely in the with me, not that far away. I walked back down the hallways I had come through. Then I made it back to the main doors, but when I got there they were blocked off. It ried it anyways, but it wouldn't open. It was like somebody had locked it. Meanwhile, I heard the footsteps of Fintha distance. I turned around and quickly walked to another hallway to try to find another exit. As I was doing this, it was like the footsteps got louder and louder, not closer, but just louder, as if the person was stomping or something. Now I started jogging down the hallways. There was no exit in the one that I was in now, so I turned and found another hallway. As I jogged, I heard the footsteps still off in the distance. Finally, I went down another hallway and saw some doors as printed to them, hoping that these would open unlike the others. When I made it there, it tried the door, and thankfully it actually opened. I left and then sprinted out into the parking lot and around the building. I found my car back where I had parked it and did not stop running until I had made it back to the car and went inside. Then I drove straight home. Not long ago the mall got demolished and they're building strip malls on the property now. We don't know what was going on that night. Why did the doors get locked behind me? Who else was in there with me? You may never know. This happened last year. We went to a really large mall with my friend Hannah, and we live not too far away from it. We go shopping there together occasionally. The mall has pretty much every store you could want and is very nice on this particular time. It was a Saturday, so the mall was very busy. There were tons of other people shopping at one point. We were in this really open area from far away. I saw this guy was just standing there, and he appeared to be staring at me. I continued to look at him, wondering if he was actually staring at me or somebody else who was nearby. The guy was large, had dark hair, but was almost bald, and also had his light beard. He continued to look at me and started pointing and waving. I looked around and was sure now that he was looking at me and not somebody else. I'm sure that I also had every confused look on my face. I pointed him out to Hannah, who agreed that he seemed to be looking at me. Wasn't creeped out at the time, but more so amused because he was really far away and there were lots of other people around. The man continued to stand there and point at me for a minute or so. Then he started walking over to us rather quickly. Weasley walked away and blended in with the crowd and were able to escape. The man had talked about him for a minute or two, wondering what he was doing. Maybe he thought we were someone else. I really didn't know. We just kept shopping after that, though. About an hour later, he saw the man again. This time we were in a mall walkway. The man was coming up from the opposite side and approaching us. She looked at me almost right after I spotted him. He turned and then started walking towards us again. We were much closer to him this time, but still able to get away very quickly. We went left and then we went down an escalator to a lower level and then into a nearby store before the man knew where we had gone. Then we continued once again with our shopping. He was really hoping that that was the last we would see of the man, and for a long time it was for the next 2 or 3 hours that Hannah and I were at the mall. We did not encounter that creepy guy. I figured that we had lost him and he left, and I pretty much forgot about him. After that, when Hannah and I were finally done shopping that afternoon, we left the mall. As we were walking outside though, I remember I heard some footsteps behind us. They were going kinda fast. So I turned around. That same creepy guy from the mall was there. He looked at us and had a grin on his face that looked anything but friendly as she walked towards us. I asked him who he was. The man then said, "You girls looking for a ride? I can drive you home." I said no. We were walking to Hannah's car in the parking lot, which was just around the corner. The man started walking even closer to us. He got like right behind us within inches and then said to us, "You guys are going to come with me." I didn't even think at all. I just started running. Hannah followed right after, and we both sprinted away from the man. He briefly gave chase, but was not very quick. We ran to Hannah's car, got inside and left. Then we reported the guy. I haven't seen him since. We've been to the mall a few times since that incident, and obviously we haven't seen him. There's so many people there, typically. And I'm not sure if he wanted to kidnap us. Or what, but I'm glad that we got away from him. This took place last year. He went to a mall nearby where I live one night. I had to get a birthday present for my sister's kid. I didn't really know what I could get him, but I figured that the mall would have some options. So I walked around trying to get some ideas. She had asked my sister, and she just said the usual, it doesn't matter. I'm sure he will like whatever you get him. Herson was 9 years old at the time, and I had already got them good gift ideas of a Nerf basketball hoop the previous year, 2 years ago. My sister got mad at me for getting him video games because she said he played them too much anyways. It tried to remember back to when I was 9 and think of what I would have liked. I ended up getting him more video games because I knew he would like them. And I don't care what my sister says. I'm going to be a cool uncle to this kids. Oh, I was in the mall for maybe 30 minutes or so. When I was done shopping, I left to go to my car. There was a pretty big parking garage right next to the mall where I had parked in by now. With it being nighttime, the parking garage was basically empty. I had parked on the second level because usually when I go it's busy and it's just kind of a habit form, so I got in my car and then went inside before I had a chance to back up and leave. Though I saw something really strange. There was what looked like a man running down the parking garage really fast. And I mean like extremely fast. It was pretty much just a blur. Most of the went out of my sight, and I was left wondering if I really just saw that. Then moments later the man came running back from the other direction, once more extremely fast. It was really strange. It thought to myself, did that guy really just run that fast? And then it thought to myself, why is someone running that fast in a mall parking garage? It was certainly strange, to say the least. I looked around in the direction that the man had run. And then Isawim, the guy was standing just in front of the wall at the end of the parking garage. He was just standing. They're not really doing anything other than looking around. I kept watching him. Because I was so confused and also curious, was she going to run some more? Was she practicing or training for something? My eyes were locked onto the guy to see what he would do. Watched him for at least 2 or 3 minutes straight, but he didn't do anything. He just kept standing there. Then I looked away for a second. When I looked back, he was gone just like that. It was really strange. After that, I just left. The whole thing just struck me as really odd. Who was that guy and what was he doing? I later found out through social media that others had seen him too. There were reports of him running through the mall. Occasionally he was called the mall runners. Other people had seen him around the mall as well for a few weeks. They thought that it was just some random guy who liked to run around the mall for some reason. And then Isawim online a couple of weeks after this, it was a social media post from a local news account. It said that a man known as the mall runner was wanted for multiple robberies, so apparently he was a criminal as well. He seemed to be a really mysterious and strange guy. I'm glad that he didn't try anything with me when I saw him in the